What's happening, everybody? It's Trey here, joined again by my dad Sean, and today at Reactions to the Classics we are closing out Led Zeppelin's discography with their last studio album, In Through the Outdoor. If this is your first time joining us, we appreciate you stopping by. Here at the channel we take a look back at some of the most classic albums of all time and do detailed track-by-track reviews of them, and just like today, it's usually the first time we've heard the record. If that sounds like something interesting to you, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button, and you can check out all our Led Zeppelin reviews in the description down below, as well as check out our Facebook page and Patreon, where you can support us, get extra vids for as little as $1 a month. And all that to say, let's just get into the quick facts.
Well, Trey, this is their 8th and final studio album. Of course, they would disband in 1980 due to the death of drummer John Bonham. This was recorded towards the end of 1978 in Stockholm, Sweden, at ABBA's studios, of all things. You really wouldn't see ABBA and Zepp together in your mind, but it's released in August of 1979. It's tied with Led Zepp 2 and Physical Graffiti as the album that spent the most time on top of the U.S. charts. It went to #1 in only its second week on the charts. Sold 1.7 million copies in its first couple weeks, and to date has sold 6 million copies worldwide. Critics were pretty divided on this, and so were fans, because it definitely has a different sound. But this album was kind of formed by all the stuff that the guys in Zepp were going through. You know, everywhere from, talked on the previous album of Plant's car wreck, but then his young son died of a stomach illness. One of the songs on here is actually dedicated to that. And then all the guys were going through some things. A couple of the guys are going through drug problems, which we'll address in a minute. And they were just getting sick and tired of dealing with record execs and people, because, man, they had been on a grind for quite some time.
As so many of the UK bands had done, they were on a tax exile, so getting back into kind of the public mind was trying to get In Through the Outdoor, and that's where the title comes in. As you mentioned, this was almost 2 teams of Zepp at this point. You have John Paul Jones take a huge leadership role, really for the first time, along with Plant writing the music and the lyrics down for a lot of these tracks. And then you had Bonham struggling with alcohol, Page in the midst of heroin addiction. So what would happen during the day, Plant and Jones would go into the studio, cut down their stuff, and then at night you'd have Bonham and Page come in, lay down their guitar and drum overdubs.
Yeah, which is not what Zepp's about right up to this point. It's usually all those guys working in synergy together, and now we've got, not that there's anything wrong, tons of bands that we reviewed, Beatles included, have gone in and done it separately and then meshed it together, but that just really wasn't Zepp's MO.
And Page, up to this point, had produced pretty much every record and had his hands all over it. This one, he took a backseat to Jones, which is why we hear some of the more synthesizer and different types of sound in this record.
That's going to start us off with In the Evening. Page actually does it on 2 of these songs. Uses a Gizmotron, which helps him create droning effects and sliding solo at the beginning of the song. It was planned as the opening track of the album for a full-blown epic in order to show they could still make good music. Lyrically simple, Plant singing about his desire for love and the fact that he currently isn't receiving that love. It's about 6.5 minutes long.
Page played this with a violin bow.
Throwing it back.
Yeah, as he had done live so many different times in the early days of Zepp, and we have the powerful riffs that contrast with the softer other portions.
A lot of tempo changes,
of the verses of the songs. I wasn't a huge fan of the vocals on this, just because they were buried, I thought, a little muddied and hard to hear. But that said, I thought the solo was fantastic, instrumentation was top notch, and had a bit of a spacey vibe to it at times, good atmosphere, even if I couldn't make out all the time what Plant was saying. Then that takes us to Southbound Saurez, not Suarez, which I thought initially I had to look. I was like, is this a typo? But this is interesting because it's written by Plant and Jones, and you can really tell that Jones's fingerprints were on this. There's an incessant piano riff that's constantly,
which I really liked,
and I could feel myself like listening to this almost like I was tipsy at a bar or something like that. Not one of my favorites on the record, but we can see some of that musical exploration.
Yeah, and lyrically, I guess it's about sex. It's hard to tell, but when it comes to Plant, you might as well just default to that. But I think that's what it's about. But I liked it more than you did. It definitely has a different sound. I can see why hardcore Zepp fans aren't crazy about this album. I personally really like this album, which we'll get to at the end, but this is one of the tracks that definitely differentiated it from the normal, quote, Zepp sound, which takes us to one of my favorite songs on here, Fool in the Rain. The last single they released in the US, it reached number 21, has a Latin feel. Plant explained this to the group that they had to get into some new musical territory in order to remain current. And it's written from the perspective of a man who's smitten and excited to meet up with a woman. Plant sings about the missed date and how disappointed he is that he's being stood up. The girl's not interested in him, and he realizes he's just a fool in the rain, loving a woman that doesn't love him back. The critics really like this song, and Sean really liked this song. I think Plant's vocals on this song, in contrast to the opener, are really brought to the forefront, and I think he sounds fantastic. And I was telling you, I think maybe Plant's vocals and his voice sounds better on this album because they hadn't toured a lot in the previous several years because of the accident, because of his son passing away, and just different things going on. And maybe that gave his voice a chance to kind of recharge.
Bonham's drumming was fantastic, great groove. You also had just an entrancing melody. I like the lines, "You swore that you would never leave me, baby. Whatever happened to you," a little biting line there that Plant, I think, is a little underrated as a lyricist, and because he can bring out lines just like that. This was one of my favorite 2 tracks on the album. And then we go to a song that's not one of my favorite 2 tracks.
Agreed.
Hot Dog.
Hot Dog, written by Page and Plant. They try to write it in a 50s rockabilly. I mean, it sounds like Plant's trying to sound like Elvis.
Oh, definitely. And we talked before about how much Plant in particularly loved Elvis.
Loved Elvis.
They met him back in 74, would use some of his tracks during sound checks.
Yes.
But yeah, this is one of my least favorite.
It has a country, I mean, they even call it a country fried guitar. I mean, the instrumentation is not bad, and the lyrical performance in itself isn't bad. It just, when you put it all together, it just didn't really work for me. I don't hate it, but it's by far for me the worst song on this album.
Definitely.
There's only 7 songs.
Yeah, so. And hearing Plant just impersonate Elvis like that, it didn't work for me. On paper, it might be a decent idea, but hey, I give him props for at least trying something different. Then we're going to go into an epic, one of the longest songs.
Second longest in the catalog.
Yeah.
Carouselambra. It starts the B-side. It's 10 minutes and 28 seconds long, and it has 9 verses. The title refers to the first section of the song because it kind of sounds like carousel music, where Jones's synthesizers dominate the song. Page's guitar plays that supporting role using that Gizmotron. It's split into 3 sections. That second section, much slower in pace.
This is the only time that Page ever played that famed dual neck guitar that he would live in the studio, so that was kind of neat. Here I was again impressed by Jones's synthesizer use in that first verse especially. My favorite portion of the track though was that middle section where we slowed it down a little bit, and lyrics here were bursting with vivid imagery, some fantasy type themes in that first verse especially, and I don't know, that it almost seems like you could read into some veiled shots that Plant is maybe pointing at Page in the second and third portions of the song. But all in all, I do like when Zepp does these epic tracks. Doesn't live up to like, In My Time of Dying or something like that from Physical Graffiti, but it's still a nice centerpiece of this record.
Yeah, I don't mind it. It's not one of my favorites on here, but because they're so unbelievable instrumentation-wise, these epic tracks always work. And just the change up of kind of 3 separate sections inside one song doesn't make it seem like a 10-minute and 28-second song. And that takes us to my other favorite on here.
Oh, yeah.
All My Love.
And this is a touching track for sure, because this is written from Plant to his son Carrick, who, as you mentioned, unfortunately passed away at the age of 5 to a stomach illness. It was not a good time for Plant when, back in the car accident that forced him into a wheelchair
for a year.
For a long time, not being able to tour a bunch, and then this happens with his son. But we start off with a nice synth and drum intro that just has a very catchy tune to it, and then we get into some fantastic vocal performance by Plant here, some very heartfelt lyrics that just really touch you, and it's probably the saddest song in Zepp's catalog, but it's actually one of my favorites in their catalog.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Yeah, and I think Plant's vocals are so good, I'm sure, because of the raw emotion. And I mean, there's nothing better to draw out a genuine performance than raw emotion and connection from the guy who's singing the vocals. And you, unfortunately, with the subject matter of this, you surely get that here.
Yeah, the lines especially, yours is the cloth, mine is the hand that sees time, his is the force that lies within within. Ours is the fire, all the warmth we can find. He is a feather in the wind. So that you have themes of cloth, fire, and the feather talked about, and then they all come together in that verse. Towards the end, he's just giving out, how he feels alone. Plant does. So just what an emotional track here. But we take it back in the record off with a little bit of a soul blues type.
Yeah, they try to mimic kind of 1960s blues with the final track, I'm Gonna Crawl. Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, Plant reference that this song was kind of inspired by. It's kind of a middle of the road song. It's not horrible at all. It's not a bad way to finish this thing off, especially after the heavy subject matter of the last song.
Yeah, this reminded me of some old school Zepp a little bit. You had the Every Little Bit bridge where we have bursts of the guitar and the drums going in, and we had those patented sexually charged howls from Plant towards the end of the record. So I think obviously they didn't know this was going to be their last song on their last studio record, but it ended up working out decent. Middle of the road for me on this record, as you mentioned, but not a bad way by any means to close out their catalog. And that's going to take us to our favorite tracks. There's only 7 songs, so not a lot to choose from, but for me they're pretty easy. All of My Love would be at the top of the list, as well as Fool in the Rain.
Well, that's it. You stole mine. So those are my 2 favorites. It takes us to our overall grade. And as you mentioned, Trey, there's 7 tracks. And it's always hard to give an overall grade when you got 7 tracks, because if any track is horrible, it really knocks it down. I don't think any track's horrible. I actually like this, like I said, a lot better than many hardcore Zepp fans do. For me, it's an 8.0.
I enjoyed this more than Presence. Not one I'm going to revisit a ton per se, but I still thought it was a solid album. I'm going to 7.25 on this record, and we've now closed out and heard.
We have.
They came out with the compilation Coda, of course, but that was just, tracks from different studio sessions that they did. It's been a fun ride, man. Led Zeppelin, definitely one of the most influential bands. Probably the best band of the 70s when you're just looking at chart success, sales, and impact.
And we're not done. We're gonna rate the top 50 Zepp songs and rank their albums in order. So be on the lookout for that.
No, definitely excited to do that. And let us know what you think of In Through the Outdoor in the comment section below. As always, Dad, appreciate the research.
I enjoyed it, man. It's been a good ride. I did not know anything about Zepp when we went into it, so it's been fun.
It really has. And if you enjoy this, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. We'll have more good Led Zepp content coming up soon. And until next time, y'all, thank you so much for watching. Happy listening, and we will see ya.